And that you can use your buttons to mute yourself, and you can be on video or off video. On video is always nicer for everybody that's presenting, because then it's you have someone to present to. Of course, there's a chat button as well. So, and a raise hand function if you want to raise your hand to ask any questions or to join a conversation. So I mentioned that this was hosted by CORE. Healthy Aging CORE Alberta is our provincial platform that we use to develop our sector capacity through information, sharing, training, mentoring, communities of practice, policy development, resource development, and collaboration. So it's a great place to meet and gain information and resources, and you can join us there at corealberta.ca. I'm with Healthy Aging Alberta, and Healthy Aging Alberta is a network of CBSS organizations across Alberta. CBSS stands for Community-Based Senior Serving Organizations, and we're all working together to make Alberta one of the best places in the world to grow older. Together, we're creating the infrastructure that connects us to increase our collective impact. So we're all more effective when we're together. It's Healthy Aging Alberta. I'll pass it to Betty.
Okay, thanks, Karen. So you met Karen, and she's with Healthy Aging Alberta. And you probably know our community of practice has expanded nationally, but we are still supported by the CORE platform in Alberta. But CORE also has a platform in BC and CORE Canada. So let me introduce the team. Our planning team consists of Corey Ladwig. She's the team lead for seniors, adult, and community programs in the County of Grand Prairie. Jane Atkins, she's the co-chair of Sundre Seniors Spruce Society in Sundre, which is just north of Calgary. Anita Newling, who can't be here today, she's the Intergenerational Initiatives Manager with Volunteer Canada, and she lives in Fredericton, but Volunteer Canada, I think, is out of Ottawa. And then Stephanie, Karen's taking Stephanie's place today because she couldn't be here, but she's the engagement and community specialist with Healthy Aging Alberta, and they help us with all our tech support, and we couldn't do this without them. And then me, I think you probably all know me. I'm an intergenerational trainer and consultant with Good Links in Calgary. So next slide, I'm really excited about our guest today. And Becca, we're so happy that you're spending your morning with us. So I'm just going to read a little bio, and then Becca is going to take over, and we are going to really enjoy what she has planned for us for the rest of the hour. So Becca Barrington has been with GeriActors. I want to say geriatrics. She's been with GeriActors since 2010, first as a friend, and then she was lucky enough to land the job as their administrator in 2012. She is a Bachelor of Arts in Drama from the University of Alberta. She has professional experience in arts administration and management, facilitation, and community-based theater. Becca also has the joy of working with Rising Sun Theatre and has previously worked with Grindstone Theatre, Chrysalis Society, and Theatre Alberta. And I'm sure you will be finding out lots more about Becca. And so Becca, it's all yours. We're really excited.
Okay. Well, I'm going to share my screen because I have a few slides that I'd like to share. And I apologize, I have a bit of a cold, so I may mute my mic and cough at some point throughout this presentation, but I'll try my best not to. So what I wanted to do today, because when Betty contacted me and said she wanted us to come and share GeriActors' story about taking short-term events to longer term, I thought, I don't know, we're not experts in that. But then I thought back to it, and GeriActors has been running since 2001. So I suppose in some way we took a short-term event and created a longer-term program. So today what I want to do is talk a little bit about who GeriActors is, the work that we do, how we create intergenerational stories. And then I have 3 different approaches that we use to bring intergenerational groups together to share stories, and make connections and build community that I want to share. And even though we're on Zoom, I am going to ask us to do some storytelling exercises. Zoom feels so strange because it sometimes feels like you're speaking into the abyss. So please, as much as possible, participate so I don't just feel alone in my kitchen. All right. I'll spend a lot of time breaking and answering anyone's questions, and I'll do my best to keep an eye out for any questions as well. But if anyone has a question and I'm not seeing you, please feel free to shout into the void, and I'll hear you. All right. Oh, I'm going back. So GeriActors is an intergenerational theater company. We create plays based on true stories and issues of aging. We get together once a week. We share stories. Our company consists of performers ranging in age from age 20 to 90. Every year that number goes up as our members age. And we bring together seniors from the community of Edmonton and students from the University of Alberta, and next year students also from Concordia University, to collaborate together, share stories, and turn those stories into plays. Being intergenerational, what we really find is we generate new energy, we generate new ideas, and we create lasting friendships. So it's really a community that's come together. And our story really starts with being founded in 2001. So essentially, the story goes that our founding artistic director, David, was on the sidelines of a soccer game, and the executive director of Sage Seniors Association at the time came up to him and said, you know, as they were watching their kids play soccer, and he said, there's a group of seniors that want to create a theater company. Could you come and chat with them? And he said, sure. So we went to Sage, and after an afternoon of drinking coffee, sharing stories, David asked if he should come back next week, and that's it. That's how GeriActors started. And then in 2007, we became the GeriActors and Friends. So we added students from the University of Alberta to come in every week, take a class, collaborate with the group, share and help us share stories and develop plays. And what we found was bringing in those students brought in a new level of creativity, a lot of playfulness. Many of them were drama students and education students, so they brought in improv games to try, acting ideas to try, different techniques and approaches to sharing stories. So it became really based on just playing together, laughing, and then finding new ways to take those stories and figure out how to perform them. At first we wrote really short plays. David would take people's stories that were shared during rehearsals. He would write them down, mostly on loose leaf paper, and then we would figure out different ways to put them on their feet, whether we had a narrator and people in the background acting them out, or it was a monologue being shared, but they were very short. They were about 5 minutes long, simple stories just transcribed from what was shared during our weekly get-togethers. And today, our plays are about 20 to 40 minutes long, and they're all based on true stories that we share in rehearsals and issues of aging that the group wants to get out there, wants to share, wants to perform. They all stem from stories shared during our weekly get-togethers. And we write plays by playing games with the students and the seniors, telling stories all together based on different ideas and themes, which we'll talk about more today. Delicious coffee breaks. We couldn't do any of this without treats, coffee, snacks. The best stories come up when you're just chatting together over a cup of coffee. And then we share those stories with audiences and we get their feedback. And they say, that reminds me of this. Have you thought of this? What about this? And then we take all of those ideas and expand our plays. So they really become universal based on the community and their experiences and their stories as well. So some of our recent plays include 2 that we're performing this year in May and June. Is Now That We're Older. which is all about the things that we leave behind as we age and sometimes forget as well, and really how aging has allowed us to leave things behind, come into ourselves and find out who we truly are. And then the Addo Street Gang, which is all based on reminiscence and stories. It's about one of our members in particular growing up in Quebec and all of the adventures and shenanigans that him and his 12-year-old friends got up to when parents weren't watching, out in the woods and in the dump and hunting rats in the dump and, trying to catch raccoons. And there's a variety of different stories that I'm sure that they never wanted their parents to find out. And then we also tell stories about common themes and ideas and issues of aging. So our play last year was called Be Careful, which was all about aging in place, figuring out ways to stay in your home, and what that meant to the members of our group being able to stay in their home but still feel safe. Our play Reading the Signs, which is also an audio play that we created during COVID, which is available on our website, which is all about giving up your license. So making that choice versus not having the ability to make that choice, and what that lack of transportation meant to our members. And then another audio play that we developed during COVID when we were online over Zoom was called Way Back. And it was all about the historical events that we've seen in our lifetime, including World War II, the first moon landing, the Berlin Wall falling, and 9/11 as well. And I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen for now, because I'd love to answer any questions people have before we get into the different storytelling approaches. That was a little bit about GeriActors and what we do, and I'd love to answer any questions that people might have.
I just have a quick question.
Yes, sure.
So when did you start with them, or were you? Sorry, I missed the very beginning. So I want to apologize for that. My name is Myrna Langto. I'm the CLC coordinator as well as mayor for the Village of Donley. So when you started this program, were you part of the right from the beginning?
No, so I started in 2012, so about 11 years after they started.
Okay.
Some
So
of
it
our
just-
members have been with the group since it started, but not
Okay.
me.
Was there any funding to start this, or it just started off with coffee breaks and people donating coffee and snacks to bring it in? And
Yeah, there was no funding. I believe for the first 5 years, there was no money changed hands whatsoever. So it was all based on
community development.
yeah. And our artistic director worked at the University of Alberta, David Barnett. So he was able to do this as part of his research through the drama department at the University of Alberta. So building an intergenerational theater, theater with seniors, but there was no funding whatsoever. So it was just, getting coffee. People would contribute to coffee. People would bring snacks, and just coming together once a week to share stories.
Nice. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to share my screen again. So the way that we create plays and tell stories is we have a few approaches, but it's really organic. So I'm going to share 3 of those approaches with you today. But there's a few rules that we follow, which I think are key to getting stories that are authentic, stories that are generous, stories that are playful. So some of the rules that we follow is that it always has to be based on play. So you can't necessarily walk in and say, tell me a story. Because if someone said that to me, I go, I can't, and your brain short circuits. So it's all based on just bringing in an idea or a game or a question, and asking people to play. And that's another rule that we follow, is that it has to be easy. So it has to be a simple question that people can expand on. We like to use open-ended questions, not closed-ended questions. Not something that someone can say yes or no to, but they add details to. We also say that stories can be true or completely made up. So our stories are based on real stories that people share, but it doesn't have to be true. You can completely make up a story, you can invent it. And then we always tell everyone that's participating in a workshop or a storytelling session that they can share as much or as little as they like. You know, we're not asking people to share their entire life story, whatever they're comfortable sharing. And then sometimes in our workshops, we'll break into pairs to share stories or smaller groups and then come together and share it with the larger group. And we always say that you may be comfortable sharing a story with a partner, but you're not necessarily comfortable sharing it with the 15 other people in the group. So we always just check in and let people know that they don't have to share what they shared with their partner with the larger group. So we really give a lot of ownership to the stories being shared, that they can be told and untold at any point, which allows people to feel a little bit more confident and comfortable when they're sharing stories. And I would love to introduce an exercise. So I'm going to ask everyone to participate. And this is an exercise that we use usually at the beginning of every storytelling workshop or session that we have. And the idea is food in a box. And I'm going to unshare my screen again. And I want everyone to imagine that you have a box on your lap. And I'm going to show it in my screen. But imagine you have a box on your lap. And don't open the box yet. And inside that box is your favorite food, whatever that is. And if you want, you can close your eyes, but you don't have to. And your favorite food could be something that maybe you've eaten only once, or it could be something that you eat every day. It could be something that you cook yourself, or it could be something that someone prepares for you, which sometimes is better, you know, if you don't have to cook it yourself. But it's inside, it's your favorite food, and it's cooked perfectly. If it's supposed to be hot, it's perfectly hot. If it's supposed to be cold, it's chilled to perfection. Whatever that food is. And just imagine it. Bring it up in your mind. Maybe your mouth is starting to water. Maybe you can smell it coming through the box. And when you're ready, I'm going to get you to lift the lid off your box. And then pull out that food, whatever it is. And, taste it. You've been waiting long enough. Give it a taste. And I know that we're on Zoom, but if you could, maybe try and feed it through the camera lens to other people. Maybe someone wants to try some food. Does anyone want to share and unmute their mic what food was in their box?
Sure, Caroline here.
Sure.
Seafood. I saw food. I saw seafood.
Oh, I love that. What kind?
And
What specifically what
scallops.
came up?
Yes. Pardon?
What
What?
specifically came up? What types of seafood?
Oh, shrimp and scallops and oysters and lovely salmon and halibut, just all of it. And
Oh,
nice white sauce.
oh, amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And Sarah?
Said box. I thought bento box. My dad has this, my dad is not, he's a man of his generation who does not have a large vocabulary for expressing his emotions or, telling us that he loves us, but he does make food. Food is his way, feeding us. I'm a child of immigrants and he grew up very, very poor. So having food around is a big deal for him. He's always overdoing it. Pardon me. And so he still to this day will make like little rice boxes for us to take, mostly my sister to school or like leftovers for the kids or whatever. And so when you said food, immediately I saw one of my dad's boxes and it would have been, the box is like a cleaned out container from some other thing because they're very not into waste. And that's why I turned my pens into chopsticks immediately because that's how I eat those. So.
I love that. There's so many visuals that you've created. We can all imagine the reused container that I'm sure all of us have. And yeah, oh, that's beautiful. Yes, and Jane.
Yeah, I have a vision of my grandma putting a box of fresh baked buns on the table with homemade strawberry jam and the aromas that I got, and even having learned how to do all of the baking and everything for that, it brings back great memories.
Mm-hmm. Oh, fresh baked bread. That is one of those nostalgic smells for me. And yes. Yeah, and Myrna.
When I visioned to open up my box, I could smell cabbage rolls, and it's the sour cabbage rolls with the tomato sauce poured over it, the way my mom makes it. And it's just like that. They're hot and they're delicious. And they got that little tangy taste when you put them in your mouth from the sour cabbage. And then on the side, there's a little bit of cookies. And my mom's favorite, or my favorite cookie was a shortbread cookie. So there's a shortbread cookie sitting there waiting for me after I'm done my cabbage rolls. So.
Oh, yes. Oh, wonderful. Any other foods anyone would like to share? Yeah, Jackie.
For me, it's growing up, spending weekends at my best friend's house and having her dad make a really rich spaghetti sauce. And so it would be on the stove all day as we, hung out, and I'd have that smell. And then, there would be a few minutes before we were ready to eat, there would be an argument between Allison's dad and mom because she insisted that there had to be greens with every meal. So he'd throw in some frozen peas. And so when I opened my box, there was this beautiful spaghetti with like green peas stuck on top. And yeah, love that meal.
Oh, I love that. Oh, that's wonderful. So this is one storytelling exercise that we use, and it's really an introduction exercise. It's an easy storytelling exercise. All 5 people who shared about the food told a story, but you didn't realize you were telling a story because you're just talking about food. And if you were doing this off of Zoom, things that you could do to adapt it, sometimes we'll get people to turn to the person next to them and just share their food, and then share with the greater group. Sometimes we'll create like a potluck, set up a table in the center, and everyone brings their imaginary food to the center, and then everyone gets to taste everyone's food. So there's ways to bring it to life off of Zoom. And other things that we do, and I wanted to brainstorm with you guys all here, was that in our box was food, but there's so infinite possibilities for what could be in the box. So my question for you, and I would love to brainstorm together, and I'll just share my screen, is what else could be in the box? What other things? And I wanted to be very tech savvy and be able to type all of our ideas together on the screen as we're brainstorming them. But I'll type them up in a Word doc, and I'll get Betty to send it to everyone who attended as well, so we can have our list of brainstormed ideas together. But what else could be in the box? Yeah, Jackie.
Favorite childhood toy?
Oh, that's wonderful. Anything else that could be in the box? Yeah, Jane.
A favorite instrument?
Oh, that one's fabulous. And then you could talk about the different, maybe music that might come from that instrument, the different sounds. Maybe they played that instrument. Yeah, Myrna.
A craft that my granddaughter makes because she loves to craft. So there's always a surprise in a box.
Oh, yes. Crafts from grandkids, maybe crafts that they made, crafts their moms made, crafts their grandparents made. Yeah.
Caroline here, a bit of a spin on that. Perhaps it's somebody else's box.
Oh, yes.
You got somebody else's box by mistake.
Oh, I love that. And then they can imagine what might be in someone else in the group's box. Yeah, Jackie.
Favorite LP, 8-track tape, CD. Sort of like the iconic music that you listen to at a particular period in your life?
Mhm.
Oh, yes, that's wonderful. Yeah, Betty.
I was thinking a little slip of paper with a thought-provoking question for us to reflect on as we're eating.
Oh, yes.
Or if we're eating with others, that would be a great discussion starter.
In the chat, Sarah said a handwritten letter or note.
Letter or note. Oh, I love that.
A book.
A photo.
Oh, yes, a photo. A book is wonderful. And then you could even, what's a line from that book or what's the story about? And then photos are always lovely because they really capture further stories because you can say, okay, this was a snapshot from a specific moment, but what came before, what came after, and really talking about that moment that story was shared.
Something else I thought of, Becca, was even just a smell, but you'd want to preface it maybe with like a good smell.
Oh, yes, smell. Perfect. Oh, these are wonderful ideas. Okay, for the sake of time, we'll move on to our next approach, but I'll save these ideas and then I'll send them over to Betty because I'd love for us to, at the end of this, have like a cacophony of different story ideas and prompts and ideas to share. All right. So we do two other approaches that I'd love to talk about. And this one, Jane mentioned that she is interested in bringing high school students together with seniors. And this is one that we've used with high school students in collaboration with Jasper Place High School here in Edmonton and seniors. And really, it starts very simply with just interviews. So we get the students and the seniors together, and the students have a list of questions that they ask the seniors about different themes. So around school, what was your favorite subject in school and why? They could ask questions about family, friends, and or love. Who was your best friend? What did you guys enjoy to do together? They can ask questions about adventure. What is a favorite place you've traveled to, for example? A fun one is clothing and fashion. What's a popular fashion trend you remember? And then getting into the different discussions about what's popular now and what was popular then. Work. What was your first job and did you like it? What age did you start that job? And talking about historical events as well. And it works really well. The students ask questions, the seniors tell stories, they're in small groups. The seniors ask questions back, this was what it was like for me back then, but what's it like for you now? When was your first job? Have you had your first job yet? Who's your best friend? Do we do similar things together? What's your favorite place that you've traveled to? Do you want to travel anywhere in the future? And where do you want to go? So it becomes this mutually collaborative storytelling. And the students, when we've done this in high schools, will write down all of the stories to all of the questions and all of the answers. And they'll transcribe them. And then they'll usually pick one story or two stories. And with the seniors, they'll create a tableau or they'll write a little script and they'll come together and perform those stories together. So some of the stories are, if I remember back to some work we did with Jasper Place, it was a story about getting in trouble with nuns at school and what that looked like. Someone told a story about going to their grandmother's for supper and all of the delicious food that she would cook. And there was a story about someone's first job working in a bakery and all of the different things that they had to do. So these really organic stories come out of just asking questions and having this really rich discussion together. And the last storytelling approach that I want to share is called 2-minute stories. And this is an exercise that we would do in pairs. And the idea is that it's like continuous writing. So when you sit down and you write for a certain amount of time without stopping, but it's spoken aloud. So you're sharing with a partner. And we provide the title of the story. So we give someone a title to go off of. Oftentimes we'll give people 2 different titles and they can pick or choose because one title doesn't necessarily resonate. And in the pairs, one person will tell a story for 2 minutes straight, no more, no less. That's a great time to have your phone and have a stopwatch. So then you can time the stories and you cut it off right at 2 minutes. And their partner simply listens. They don't ask any questions. They don't interrupt. They just listen to the story being told. And then they switch. So each person will tell a story for 2 minutes. And some of the titles that we use are The Story of My Name, How I Got Here Today, which can mean a variety of things. It could be how you got here to this particular space, or how you got to your life, or any iteration of that. The time I almost got into trouble, the almost being very important. A journey or adventure I took once, a game I played as a child. So those are some of the titles that we use, but I wanted to brainstorm together and answer any questions about these 2 approaches, about other titles that you might use for this particular approach. Yeah. So are there any questions about anything I've shared, or any ideas for another title that you might use for a 2-minute story? Yeah, Betty.
One thing that often comes to mind that I do with my grandkids, what's the most embarrassing thing that ever happened to you?
Oh,
And
yeah.
we've probably all done that at some point.
That always lends itself to such humor, I think, because
Yeah.
you remember it. And the thing with embarrassment is it stays with you. You're still embarrassed to talk about it to this day. Yes. Yeah, Jackie.
The time I got lost.
Oh, yes.
Or maybe best concert ever.
Yes. Any prompts around music are fabulous. People have such connections to music, and yeah. Yeah, Sarah.
My best friend.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Betty.
What's the most expensive thing you ever bought besides the obvious, like a house or a car?
Oh, yes.
I remember I used to teach ESL, conversation English, in Japan. And I remember asking this, and this 20-year-old, I'll never forget her answer. She spent $2,000 on a purse. And she was 20.
Oof.
She had to borrow the money, of course.
But it could, yeah, that idea could lend itself to some really humorous stories. You know, things that you splurged on or saved for, of course, but maybe there's things that something happened and you just went, I guess I gotta fork out $5,000 for this mistake or this thing.
Oh, yeah.
So many stories could come from that. Any other ideas for titles that you could use for stories?
Road trips with my family.
Oh, yes. The good, bad, and in between. I always find that travel stories, particularly when you connect it to like a mode of transportation, always lead to really interesting stories. You know, something that happened on a boat, or something that happened on a plane, or a road trip, you know, in a car. Is there one last title that we want to share?
I always thought that a thing like When I Was 10 thinking back to when they were 10 years old, things that happened.
Oh, yes, absolutely. That's a convention that we've definitely used before, thinking back to particular ages. And it doesn't always necessarily, the story doesn't exactly have to have taken place when you were 10, but it draws people back into a particular moment in time to think, okay, when I was 10, when I was 15, when I was 20, what was happening in those periods of time? You could even have a little fun with it and say, when I was born, what happened? And maybe they imagine through hearing other people talk about their birth, what happened the day that they were born. Yeah, Myrna.
What about the earliest childhood memory?
Oh, yes. Wonderful. So these are some titles that we could use, that we use with this storytelling approach. You just give someone a prompt, an idea, a title, and see what it sparks. It might come up with, it might really resonate with people. When we introduce this game and this exercise, we always give people two options so they can choose something that the one that they resonate the most with. But then we also say, or just tell a story, just in case they can't quite figure out what to tell and they get stuck on trying to figure out something that fits really precisely with the title that you've given. But giving someone this sort of container of the 2 minutes, the title, often leads to someone thinking of something that maybe they haven't thought about in years. I mean, give someone like a framework to work within so that they're not asked to tell a story and then think about all of the infinite stories that we have in our lives. When someone asks you to tell a story, you think, oh, there's so many options, and you get overwhelmed. So really containing it, we find quite helpful. I have one last slide to share. And this is just some ideas that I had about how we have continued long-term. What has allowed us to continue for almost 25 years. And then I'd love to open it up to discussions to hear what other people are doing, their ideas for taking short-term programs and making them long-term. So for us, continuing long-term has really come down to a few things. There are infinite prompts, questions, ideas, and themes. As we've brainstormed today, just with the 11 of us here in this space, we came up with a number of questions and ideas that could lead to, with different groups, infinite stories. And even if you ask the same question every few weeks, people might think of a new answer and people might think of a new story. So really, there's never ending possibilities for stories to be shared. GeriActors, often every year we go and we say, I think we've told every story we've ever had. We have no more stories left. We're all tapped out. And that never turns out to be true. There's always a story that comes up. Sometimes stories are repeated, and our philosophy is if someone's telling a story for the second or third time, that story needs to come out and we need to find a way to bring it to life. We try as much as possible to keep it simple. So with these simple ideas of you're just going to talk for 2 minutes and tell a story, here's a title. Or you're just going to imagine something in a box. You give someone a framework, you keep it simple, then it can expand from there. If you're, coming together for a weekly or a monthly storytelling gathering, maybe you choose a theme. Maybe if it's taking place in May, you tell stories about spring. Maybe it's taking place around the holidays, you tell stories about the holidays and different celebrations. Maybe you tell stories about childhood one week. And then for us, we found that keeping it consistent worked really well. After that one gathering in 2001, every week you get together, you share stories. Doesn't have to be every week, but maybe once a month, maybe every few months, but having that consistency that you're always going to gather. Snacks, very important. You need cookies, you need cake, you need coffee, you need tea. The best stories come out of just sitting down with a cup of coffee and chatting and having casual, informal conversations. And then we also use this philosophy of sharing something before you go. So even if we're sharing in pairs, we want to come back together into the larger group and share even just little hints of stories that come up with the storytelling in a box, for example. Today, we all shared story together. And then that often leads to this question that we ask the group of, that reminds me of. Caroline's story about seafood might remind you of a time you went fishing, or seafood that you've eaten once. And Sarah's story about her family and sharing their love through food might remind someone of their family as well, and food and love and all of that. So we always use that philosophy of sharing with the larger group in whatever way that looks like. And that reminds me of, because often someone sharing a story will spark another story. And then it becomes this, giant cacophony of stories being shared. And then lastly, we always do, we try and create something fun together. For GeriActors and friends, we create performances, we write plays, we perform them. But in the past, we've done storytelling workshops where we've transcribed the stories shared into a book that we can give people at the end of it. You can record the stories on your phone and create a little video of the stories. You can share the stories with family and friends. So having something creative that you create together to make these stories last and live long term, give people a voice in which to share them, we always find is very enriching and exciting. That is everything I wanted to share today. I would love to open it up to what other people are doing. This presentation, of course, is really on storytelling, but there's so many different ways of bringing community together in shorter term events and creating longer term events. So I'd love to open it up to, questions you have, other storytelling ideas you have, or other events and work that you're doing as well. Yeah, Jackie.
I agree with all the points that you made about consistency and having food and keeping it simple and fun. I do value the work that people like you and Betty and others do. You need a champion. You need somebody that's going to hold everybody together, help facilitate that. And that role is so important. I don't think you can, have groups like this community of practice or the GeriActors and Friends come together without having one person or a small core group of people who are doing the planning work, the preparatory work, to making that event come across as seamless. So I just wanted to add that to the list of key ingredients that make it possible for one-off events to keep going.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what we found, this is a memory that I have from a storytelling workshop we did many years ago, just thinking of your champion word, is even if you're the champion of a program you're doing in your community, but if you can identify a champion in the group as well. We had one woman, her name was Tiny, that was her nickname, and she became the champion of the seniors residence. So she wanted these storytelling workshops to happen, and she would every day go around and knock on people's doors and just say, oh, the storytellers are here, come on down. So if you can even find a champion in a storytelling group to, talk about why they're enjoying the program, or any group that you're doing, and knock on people's doors and, drive people to the session or make phone calls, that's always helpful. Any other questions or thoughts? Yeah, Betty.
I have a very specific question. When you pair them, how do you pair them?
We do it very organically. Simply, lots of times when we're gathering in workshop spaces or rehearsal spaces, where we start by gathering in a circle. And so it's just, find a partner. Usually it's the person next to you. With the GeriActors and Friends group, they've been working together for so long that they'll, just grab whoever they see. But usually we pair people very organically. With certain groups, of course, I always say that people know their groups best. So you might want to say these two people will work well together. These two people maybe don't work well together. So then you could pre-establish groupings, or maybe people who who need a little bit more support, and maybe people who are more leaders versus followers, and figuring out those pairings as well. So we do it very organically, but it doesn't have to be. You could pair them up.
So my reason for asking is because this is an intergenerational focus. And I'm wondering, because you have the two generations, do the pairs usually gravitate to young and older together? Or
Yes.
not necessarily?
Yes, anytime you're doing intergenerational work, my recommendation is always to try and get young and old together. So even if you have a group of 15 and you have 5 of them are younger and 10 are older, maybe you do groups of 3. So then you can have 1 younger and two older. So as much as possible, try and get the young and old to merge. People naturally, we find, especially with when we get together with new students, people naturally gravitate towards connecting with people that they know well. So the students will want to pair up with the students and things like that. Yeah, Chris.
Hi. Yeah. Great session. I really enjoyed it. All kinds of really amazing things in there. I particularly liked how you talked about, like, with the ideas, you know, when you're brainstorming, if you're on a topic, but, you know, like, I love how you said, but, you know, if you can't think of something on that topic, you know, anything that's being sort of jogged. I love that, because it really, sometimes you can't think of a specific story relating to a specific topic, but the way our brains work, you often think of something else that's sort of seemingly unrelated to that topic. You know, it's just like, I do have a story to share. I don't know how this popped into my head, but I have this thing. So I love that idea. I have a group that I work with called Amazing Elders at the C5 Hub. And often, you know, we just sit and just share. We're starting to do, like, sharing circles. That's one of the things that has come up, like story sharing, and so often I'll just pass around, like, an object or something like that. But I love this idea, you know, thank you for the, you know, the idea about the box. That was great. Sorry, that's a preamble for, so that's one thing that I do, but I'm here because we did something called Bridging Communities this year. It was a big event that just brought all kinds of different cultural communities together. And, you know, like, I want to make sure that it was a huge success. You know, lots of people came, they were highly engaged, and we got to, like, intermingle these communities that don't, you know, that seemingly are sort of in their own bubbles, either their own community leagues or their own cultural centers. You know, we're able to come together in one room and share all kinds of, you know, food and and discuss different topics and things like this. And I'm keen on making sure that it happens again, because so much so, you know, you get funding for something like this and then it sort of, like, it doesn't happen again. And I really, really want to make sure that it happens again. We don't have we don't have any funding. Like, it was a one-time funding event, so it's going to be, you know, creatively we're going to have to figure out solutions. But you know, we're at Sage, we have a space, so I think can be a pared down version of that. But the one thing that I mostly got out of it was, out of your session today, that reminded me, was, like, just keep going. Like, if you can have that second event, you know, then the chances of having a third are going to be even greater, you know. And organizing, like, something like this it's a, you know, there's all kinds of different groups, and so it's difficult. It's going to take about a year to organize again. But if it can just happen, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. But if we can just get it to happen, I think that's going to be a huge thing.
That's all Betty and I were chatting about this before the session started. The funding is the most complicated part about taking short-term events and making them longer term. Because, of course, project funding, they go, do a project but don't repeat the project, is often the philosophy. And then So wanting to bring something back, and how do you maintain it? And how do you bring in more funding to sustain a project, especially working in the senior sector where, you know, you can't fund something based on registration fees or ticket sales, because you want to keep things accessible, and you want to make sure that people can afford to participate. So yeah, I don't have any solutions, easy solutions, but I think if you just, yeah.
No, I think, you know, it's never easy, but I think, you know, just talking with you about the success of your group, and it's something that I'm trying to do with, I have other various groups, men's sheds and other groups that are popping up all over town, you know, like organically, or sometimes the community league will want to get something started. So it's just a good reminder, you know, that consistency is for someone to go, oh, it's Friday at 1 p.m. and I know I can go to this thing that's happening and there's going to be someone there. I think it's really important, you know, not only for the longevity of the group, but for the, you know, just for the peace of mind to know that there's in our increasingly chaotic world, that there's something, you know, happening on my schedule on that day, and it's something nice to hang on to. It gives you a sense of comfort, and it also is there if you need it. If you don't want to go that day, great, you know. But if there's another day where you're feeling like I really need to connect, or you know, like that it's there for you. And I think I just think it's really important. But yeah, you're right. Like cost is a huge thing. Like I'm trying to run programs that have zero cost, right? And sometimes things will come up where people will go, well, we should do this. And it's just like, yeah, but we got a bus there, and then there's a ticket price. And it's just like, that's not for us. Like, what can we do instead? And I was just wondering, does GeriActors do workshops? Like, would you be, is there someone who could come to my amazing elders and do this kind of work with my seniors for a day, like, and go through these exercises with them? There is some interest in the group for this kind of, you know, I've been meaning to actually connect with you about this. So it'd be great to chat with you further about possibilities of doing a workshop like this with the group.
Yeah, I would love it. I think you said you were at Sage, so we'll connect when we're both at Sage at some point. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I was thinking I'd love to drop in and just hang out during be a fly on the wall. I don't know if that's possible, but we'll talk.
Yeah, sounds wonderful. And then I know Sarah had her hand up as well, and then Betty as well. And I'll wrap things up because I think we'll say Sarah, and then we'll wrap things up.
Sure. Hey, Chris, you kind of said it anyways, because that, like, I'm a music teacher in my other life. I'm a classical pianist by trade. And so, you know, people are always looking for, like, I have the dream song I want to play, or I want to perform it like XYZ, and they have goals, which is great. Or I'll have a student that's like, oh, I'm really working on like my confidence. So this year my goal is like, I'm just going to become confident. And I'm like, well, that's a great goal. But it's all those little steps along the way. It's like that person who's knocking on the doors and being like, hey, it's time, you know, or like I'm going, even like with friends, like I'm going to a yoga and you complain about your back hurting all the time. So you're coming, you know? And so having those champions and advocates that help stimulate that consistency, I think is really key. And then, you know, for that champion, I think to be bought in, I think once you're actually like in community and working together and you understand, I work in mentorship, you understand that two-way street of like benefit to your sense of self, your ability to learn things, your ability to share things, and your connection with others. I think that can be really inspiring. But making the places and the spaces and very unsexy, but like we talk a lot about evaluation at my work, because if you can't evaluate it a certain way, it's almost like it doesn't exist for funders and that kind of thing. So, you know, having someone on the team whose specialty it is to keep track. What are we doing? How many people are we doing it for? How many years did we do it for? It's like my brain is not really like that, but there's wonderfully gifted people who are. And so if we can always have one of those on our team, I think that's a win.
Mm-hmm. yeah, finding those ways to report things so that people can say, oh, this is the quantitative and qualitative impact that something is happening. And then, yeah, finding those consistent spaces where people, especially intergenerational groups, might gather. Jane, you work with high school students and seniors. So those are two spaces where younger people are going to be. They're in high school, and then seniors as well. Finding those spaces that you can make those connections. I'm going to pass it over to Betty.
Now you wrap up because we have about 2 minutes left. So you wrap up your portion and then I'll wrap up our session.
Perfect. Well, I have that was everything I wanted to share. What I'll do is I want to compile all of our brainstormed ideas, and then I'll pass along my slides to Betty, and then she can share it with everyone. So my hope was that everyone at the end of this would have like some storytelling ideas and prompts and things that you could use and apply if you wanted with intergenerational or seniors groups that you work with. So I'll compile all of our ideas together, and then we'll have a great list of prompts and ideas. But thank you so much for having me. It was so fun to chat with people.
Becca, this was delightful. Let's all give her a hand. I'm sure. I'm sorry, the hour is up, so hang in there for about 2 more minutes. And usually I give you time to do feedback. But I'm not going to today, but Karen has put the feedback link into the chat box. So what I would like you to do is once you log off of Zoom, could you just do the feedback form, because it's important so that we can get your feedback, but you'll have to do that on your own time. I just want to Seneca, can you? Good, she did. I just want to say thank you so much, Becca. This was wonderful. I'm sure everybody got so much out of it. Once the recording is ready, we will be sending that out to you. And also, we always, well, Stephanie and Karen, they always put the recording in the core group, the intergenerational group on core. And also, I think Healthy Aging Alberta has a YouTube channel that they put on, but you'll get the recording or access to it. Okay, I will also be sending out Becca's email address, and Sarah has put a little evaluation resource in the chat box. So there's a link there if you want to use that. Okay, so let me tell you about our next IG Cafe. I don't know how we're going to top Becca. Well, it's not a competition, right? Because Becca was great, and this was really, really good. And let me just talk about, I'm all over the place. Can you tell I have ADHD? So Becca talked about the storytelling and the consistency, and Christopher talked to how do we turn them into long-term programs. And obviously, we are all interested in intergenerational work, and we know the benefits of intergenerational relationships, the reciprocal benefits. So by turning them into longer-term intergenerational programs, the goal isn't to have a long program. The goal, of course, is to empower the participants in the program so that they can develop relationships. Okay, so next one, IG Cafe, is Tuesday, May 14th, 10:30 to 11:30 is Mountain Standard Time. And we're going to talk about what's being done in the schools. Like I work with a number of clubs in Calgary, and schools are great. They're great, that's where I go to get the students for my programs. So we're going to find out what's happening across Canada, what's being done in schools. And also let's talk about intergenerational activities that we can do over the summer. So we're not going to, unless somebody sends me an email and say, hey, you should invite so-and-so. This is going to be a sharing cafe, just like we're going to a coffee shop and we're sharing. Because I find people often say to me, I want to know what's happening in other communities. because especially if you're in a rural community, you often feel isolated and you feel like you're the only one doing this kind of stuff, but you're not. You are not the only one. So this is a great opportunity to connect with people throughout Canada and find out what are they doing and to get ideas for you guys to do. Okay, do you see that picture? That's our university club in Calgary. The University of Calgary has a club and they go to this apartment building and meet with these low-income seniors once a month and play games, or I'm going to tell them to start doing storytelling. So, okay, I think that's it. And I want to say again, thank you so much. Oh, look in the chat box. Becca has put her email address and her phone number. Oh, and one more thing. Thanks, Karen, for the reminder. If you're not a member of our group on CORE, even though you're not in Alberta, you can still go to corealberta.ca. You can join our group. Okay? Okay, I think so. If you want to hold down the screen, and thank you again. Thanks, Becca. Thanks everybody for coming. And you all have my email address. If you have any ideas, email me and I'll share them with the group. Okay, thank you. Happy Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thank you, but thank you very much. Thank you very much, Betty.
Okay, thank you.
You are going to send the recording or the presentation? Are you going to send the
Yes.
presentation?
I will send the recording.
Okay.